It's going to come from Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, verse 1. Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come and the years draw near, when you say, I have no pleasure in them.
Praise be to God. Scripture we out this morning. Keep all those who are missing in your prayers. It's been maybe it's because no one wants to sit directly in front of me. Maybe we just have some sickness going through. I don't know. But keep everybody in your prayers if you don't see. Maybe reach out to them, write them a call, give them a call, send them a text, email, smoke signals, whatever it is to let them know you're thinking about it. It's great that you're running this morning. I mean, you could have chosen to be literally anywhere else, but you chose to be here, and I'm glad you're here. And so is God. God is glad you're here. I want to mention two things. One, we have a youth day coming up, and it's going to be on May the 20th. This youth day is specifically for ages 12 through young adults, 21, 22. That's not exclusive. Everybody is welcome to come, and everybody should come. Young children, my kids will be here. All kids should be here. But the lessons are going to be here specifically for those of that age. Also with that, I'm going to need volunteers to kind of man our tables for games when we have our sessions to have games, and as well as our crafts. So I'm going to put a sign-up sheet out. If you would just sign up for that. Also be here for Monday Night with the Master, because we will then give all the details to how those things will run, and so on and so forth. So we have a youth day coming up. We hope to have a lot of youth here, which means a lot of eyes, so every kid can be properly chaperoned, and that if they need anything, we can point them to the right places, and so on and so forth. So make plans to be here for that. So on May the 20th. Also following that on May 20th, Brother Evans.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, Kevin. I'm sorry, Kevin. Kevin Evans is having a walk on this day for supporting those who struggle with the thoughts of suicide. We have veterans who come back and they really have that struggle, and we lose a lot of veterans every single day to suicide. So he's having a benefit simply for the brand that he is an ambassador of, Ambassador 22. So it's going to be on that exact same day, and it will come like right on the heels at the end of our youth day. So leaving from here to there would be a great thing to do. Going to support him and support that walk. Don't tell Kevin, I can't remember his name. Keep this between us. So give that. If you guys see on our bulletin board, there's a flyer back there from the Edgewood Church of Christ. It's in Greenville, South Carolina. They are having a gospel meeting, and they're doing a gospel meeting as like a lectureship. They're going to have multiple speakers starting on Sunday morning, going through Tuesday. And I'm going to be the speaker on Monday, and I'm going to preach this lesson on that Monday, May the 8th, that I'm about to preach here this morning. So what I need for you to do is give me some critique on this lesson. If it's the one that makes sense, if it flows well, if it is what it should be, and if there's some things that could be added or taken out, let me know after this lesson. And also, don't make plans to come on that day, because you will hear the exact same lesson. Just pay attention to this morning. If you missed something, just know you can catch it again next month. The topic of the whole thing is about using the gospel to reach out to people, how we can reach many with the gospel. And the topic that I was given was one that is concerning losing our youth. Why do we lose our youth is the question that I've been given to tackle. And the title is In the Days of Youth. In the Days of Youth. So every congregation that I've been a part of, with the exception of one, and that would be my home congregation in Mount Vernon. When I came into Mount Vernon, they had a great youth. Shelby and her brother were there, and then there was a lot of others who were there around the same age as me, and some who were younger. And those youth grew up into a great youth with the exception of that congregation, every congregation I've been a part of has said the exact same thing. We used to have such a great youth group. We had so many who were here, and they would come and we would do these events and those events, and then they also will follow up with these very same people have grown up, and a lot of them have moved away. Some have left the church completely, some have moved away and they serve in other places. There are some generations of children who don't know anything about the church because their parents have chosen to leave the church. And so the question is, why is that the case, and how can we prevent that from happening? And we're asking the question of why in the days of our youth, we didn't retain them. How can we answer that question and do so in the future? So I think we should ask ourselves a few questions in answering those questions. First question we should ask, so why are you here? I want this question to be specifically for those who are 40 and up. Those who are 40 and up who have either grown up in the church or not, who came to the church later, but you are here for a very specific reason. And your reason for being here is going to be a lot different for those who are 39 and down, who have young families and have small children, and those who are just of themselves, small children and young adults, and they are here of their own wills. Why are you here? This is a great question. Look at Matthew 17. Matthew 17. I want to be clear, this is not an exhaustive list of reasonings as to why someone who's of the age 40 and up would be here, but this is going to be some of that, some of the answers to why you are here. Matthew chapter 17. As you're coming into Matthew 17, of course, at the end of chapter 16, you have Jesus questioning his disciples, who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And they give them answers. Some say John the Baptist or Isaiah, one of the prophets. And he says, well, who do you say that I am? And Peter says, you are the Son of the living God. And Jesus is going to say, yes, upon that rock, I'm going to build my church. That rock being the confession. I'm going to build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. He goes on to say that I'm going to give you the keys to this kingdom. Not only am I going to establish this kingdom, but I'm going to let you know how you can gain interest into this kingdom. I'm going to give you the keys. And then he goes on and says, the next verse, don't tell anyone about who I am as being in Christ, not just yet. And then he goes on to tell them that, guys, I'm going to have to suffer a lot of things at the hands of the chief priests and the rulers, and I must then die. Peter's going to then pull them aside and rebuke him and say, we're not going to let anything happen to you. Jesus is going to tell him, get behind me, Satan. There in verse 22. No, the reason why Peter said this is followed up verse 23 following. He says, you're following after Satan, this is why you're thinking this way, but you should be someone who is bearing your own cross, denying yourself and picking up your cross and following me. If you're doing that, then you're not going to be someone who's rebuking the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who you just said that I was. It says you should pick up your cross and follow me. He then goes on to tell them there's going to be some who are here this very day who will not taste of death until they see the kingdom come. Then we're into 17. When you get into chapter 17, this is 6 days after these events have happened. Jesus is going to be there discussing with his disciples, and then he's going to go up to a high mountain with Peter, James, and John. And like, this high mountain, he's going to transfigure. He's going to change into who he is or who he's going to look like once the resurrection happens. And while he's there, it says his face is shining like the sun. His clothing was white. It was white like the light. And then Peter says this in 17 and verse 4, answering the question as to why you are here. The answer is you're here for God, and it's good for you to be here. Matthew 17 and verse 4 says, then Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Even though Peter wasn't fully understanding the importance of the moment, why he was there, he knew that it was good for him to be there. Even though he didn't understand all the ins and outs of what he could learn in that moment, standing before Jesus, the law and the prophets, the representation of those two, Moses and Elijah, even though he didn't know what it was all in all, he knew that it was good for him to be here. You know, as you get older, and it seems like you've gone through this church thing for a very long time. You've seen all the ups and downs of the church. You've gone in the good times and in the bad times. You've seen the growth, and you've seen the shrinking, and you're asking yourself, why am I here? You remember that you are here for God, and it's good for you to be here. It's good for you to be here because you're someone who's going to be able to continue to do good. Why are you here? You are here for doing good. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, you are here for doing good. Never let it become routine. You're showing up and going through the motions. You're here because it's a fixed program. It's just what I think on Sunday mornings. Let it be that whenever you get here, you're here because you've made good habits, a good habit of being present and doing good works. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, you're going to see Paul multiple times make reference to those who have chosen to not walk according to the faith. And those who are choosing not to walk according to the faith, he says that you shouldn't keep any company with them. In fact, he says that there are some who are not willing to do their part. And I've told you guys that if you don't work, then neither shall you eat. So those who are not working and doing their part, let them eat their bread in quietness. Then he says in verse 13, 2 Thessalonians 3, and verse 13, he says, but as for you, brethren, do not grow weary in doing good. If you follow to verse 14, he says, for those who aren't willing to obey the words of this epistle, don't keep any company with them. Then in verse 15, he says, but don't mark them as an enemy because they're not your enemy, they're still your brother, so admonish them as your brother. That's very important. We don't talk about that. That's not this sermon, but think about that. Whenever we have people who have fallen away, who are choosing not to serve God, they are not our enemies. They are not enemies of the cross. They are brothers in Christ and sisters in Christ who need our encouragement and our admonishment, our urgent warning of the state that they're in. Nonetheless, we are here for doing good. Think about those who are in the 40 and up range, who have been a part of the church for a very long time, who've seen all of those great things in what the church used to be. And now they are here amongst a generation that they feel is not quite getting it done, and they are struggling. Because they want to continue to do good works, but they are weary of not having anyone around them doing the work. Paul says in the beginning of chapter 3, there are some who aren't doing the work. He says in the middle of chapter 3, there are some who are not doing the work. He says at the end of chapter 3, there are some who are not doing the work. But in the midst of all that, he also says, but as for you, brethren, don't grow weary in doing good works. Even if no one else around you is working, you continue to do good works. Why are you here? You are here because it's good for you to be here, and you are here because you're not growing weary in doing good. You're also here for bearing burdens. You're also here for bearing burdens. You're here for bearing burdens, not to be a burden. Let's look at 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, is the greatest example we're giving there for the churches throughout Macedonia. And the fact that they were willing to give it themselves first to the Lord and then to the brethren. And they gave beyond what they were even able. They knew what they had in their poverty, but yet they gave as much as they could and didn't sell. But Paul had all things that he needed. If you look through there, you'll see also that God gives us the means for how we are to give. At the beginning of chapter 9, he says, as concerning the ministry to the saints, this is how you should do it. But in verse 6, let it be those who are going to give bountifully, reap bountifully. If you give sparingly, you will also reap sparingly. He goes on to say in verse 7, we should give as our heart desires, as our heart has purpose, because God loves a cheerful giver. And he says that this should be the way that we do so, and God will make us to increase in our righteousness. When you get to chapter 10, Paul speaks on his authority. He continues that very idea of his authority into chapter 11. So let's go there. Chapter 11 and verse 9. 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 9. Paul says, even though I have an authority over you, as an apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ, I did not come to you in that way. But everything that I have, I make sure to have those things taken care of, and I was not a burden to you or anyone. Those who are in the 40 and up crowd, who know what the church used to be, and know the expectations of where they want the church to be, it's very difficult not to put those expectations on the youth who are unable to bear. You are here to be a burden bearer, not a burden. Look at verse 9. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 9 says, and when I was present with you in need, I was a burden to no one. For what I lacked, the brethren who came from Macedonia supplied, and everything I kept myself from being burdensome to you, and so I will keep myself. You're here for God, and it's good for you to be here. You are here for doing good works, and it's difficult not to grow weary in it because sometimes it feels like you're the only ones working or who desire for the church to be in a certain place. But you cannot be a burden to those who are trying to do as you are trying to do. Or rather, you should be a burden bearer for those who are trying to get to where you have gotten to in your faith. Whenever we're talking about the days of our youth, they have such a great youth group and they're blossoming and they're growing. And then it seems to be that they've left and we don't know where they went. We're asking why is that the case and how can we get them back? We first have to know why we are here. Then we have to ask ourselves a question. Why are they here? This is going to be for those who are 39 and down. Why are they here? What are they doing here? What are they looking for? It's a very interesting question. And here's a few ways in which we can answer this question. First and foremost, they are here for compassion, not captivation. They are here for compassion, not captivation. Whenever you see someone who comes to this auditorium and they have children or they themselves are young, they're coming in because they have the very same struggles in life that you have. Compassion is defined as someone who has concern for the sufferings and misfortunes of another. When you see them come in downtrodden, beaten up by the world, having the world pulling at them in so many different ways, and they come into this safe haven of rest, they're looking for someone who can share in their sufferings, who can have compassion on them, not someone to captivate them. You know, captivation is defined as to attract or to hold the attention of, to charm. They're not walking into this auditorium to be charmed for some time, to have something to attract them and to hold their attention, only for them to leave and go back into the world and to be beaten down yet again. Let's go to Matthew chapter 15. Matthew chapter 15. Why are they here? The youth are here for compassion. They're not looking for captivation and temporary fix to long-term problems. They are looking for something that can sustain them forevermore. Matthew chapter 15. When you get to the beginning of Matthew chapter 15, Jesus is sitting there on the Sabbath day, and some asked him, who the Pharisees asked him, why do your disciples transgress the law or transgress the traditions of the elders? And Jesus looked at them confused, and he's like, what are you talking about? Why do they transgress the traditions of the elders? Why do you transgress the law by keeping these traditions? He goes through a few of the laws that they don't keep and they transgress. And then he says, just like Isaiah said, he was true in saying this. You keep on reading down, verse 8 and 9. It says, it is true that you are drawing close to me with your mouth and honor me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me. It goes on to say in the following verse, not only your hearts are far from me, but in vain you worship me, teaching this doctrine. Amen. If you keep on reading down in the chapter, Jesus is going to come across some more. He's going to say that it's not what goes in a person that defiles him, but what comes out. His disciples say to him, well, Jesus, you're going to upset the Pharisees by saying this. And Jesus said, okay, don't worry about them. Let the blind lead the blind, they both will end up in the ditch. He comes across a Canaanite woman. This Canaanite woman comes to him and asks him to please heal my daughter. She's demon possessed. And Jesus says, don't you know I came to the lost for the house of Israel? The woman continues to plead with him, and Jesus says, well, you wouldn't take away from a child and throw it to the dog. The Canaanite woman says, no, but even the dogs can have crumbs from the table. Jesus says, your faith is great. What you have said, let it be so. If you keep on following this context, Jesus then is going to heal a multitude of people, and they're going to all gather around him. He's going to heal every element you can think of. Look at verse 32. Matthew chapter 15, verse 32. People who come into this auditorium of a certain age are looking for compassion, not looking for charm, they're not looking for someone to hold their attention, looking for people who are concerned about their struggles and misfortunes in life. In Matthew 15, verse 32, this is what Jesus had on them. Now, mind you, in the previous context, Jesus was doing nothing but teaching and healing people. Yet he, in this moment, thought to himself, I need to be compassionate on these people. What's more compassionate than what he had been doing? He goes on and says in Matthew 15, verse 32, now Jesus called his disciples to himself, and he said, I have compassion on the multitude because they have now continued to read 3 days and having nothing to eat, and I do not want to send them away hungry, lest they faint on the way. This is what compassion looks like. When those who come into this auditorium and come amongst the church and come within the faith, they are looking for people who care about their misfortunes. The reason why they want to be properly fed, because once they leave this assembly, we do not want them to faint, because the world is not going to be feeding them the way that we just fed them here this morning. Looking for compassion, not captivation. Why are they here? They're here for love. They're here for love and not for leisure. Love is defined as, when we talk about that agape love, we're talking about the kind of love that is desiring what's best for someone else, even if it goes to your own hurt. Even if this is something that's gonna make you uncomfortable, even if it's something that's gonna put you out, so to say, you are still willing to do it for the best of someone else. If you ever see someone in these pews, just know that they didn't come here because of leisure. Well, I got some free time, so I thought I'd go and worship someone this morning. But rather, they came here with a purpose, and that purpose was they were looking for love. Let's go to Mark chapter 10. Mark chapter 10. Only 2 times in scripture do we see the phrase love him mentioned. One time here in Mark 10, verse 21, which we'll read in just a second. And the other in John 11, verse 36, we see Lazarus dying and Jesus coming and crying, and the Pharisees saying, look at how he loved him. When you get to Mark chapter 10, verse 21, we see Jesus here giving some answers to a young man who's coming to Jesus and inquiring about eternal life. In verse 17, we see a man come to Jesus and he says, good teacher, what must I do to have eternal life? And Jesus says, why do you call me good? There's none good except for the Father in heaven. Anyways, Jesus tells him, well, this is what you need to do. He tells him a few things from the law. He says, all those things I've done since my youth. And then Jesus says this in verse 21. People who are coming here are just like this man. They are looking for love. In Mark 10, verse 21, it says, then Jesus, looking at him, loved him and said to him, one thing you lack, go your way, sell whatever you have, give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come, take up the cross and follow me. You go back to the first part of this point. They're looking for compassion. People who can see their misfortune, people who know that you are going through a struggle, and I want to help you remove that struggle so that you can properly follow after Jesus. This rich man comes to Jesus. He doesn't realize how much of a struggle he's having in life for his faith because he can't see it through all the wealth that he has. Jesus says, let me remove this misfortunate thing. I know you think because you have all this money, you are greatly fortunate, but this thing is what's keeping you from God. I'm going to be compassionate towards you and love you. Those who are 39 and younger, who are having all the struggles in life that you faced when you were young people, they are looking for someone who is compassionate towards them, who loves them enough to say, you need to put this thing to the side and you can properly follow after God. I don't know if you've ever noticed the difference between Matthew chapter 15 and Mark chapter 10 here. And at the end of Matthew chapter 16, Jesus says you should take up your cross and follow me. And to hear in Mark chapter 10, verse 21, he says, take up the cross. Jesus says, I'm going to help you remove the thing that's really causing you discomfort and struggle in life, and I want you to come and help me and bear this cross that is the faith. And doing so, you're going to have the love of God. In Mark chapter 10 and verse 21, Jesus lets us know that we should love those who are struggling. Why are they here? They are here for rest, not for rebuke. Let's go to Romans chapter 5. Romans chapter 5. Why are you here? Why are they here? They are here for rest, not rebuke. Rest can be defined as to recover strength. To recover strength. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed any parents who come in here on Sunday mornings and they have the bags under their eyes and they had to fight every single child getting up this morning. And if they're shown, they had to fight all the children and then the husband getting him up as well. And they get here and it took a lot. They got here early enough for Bible class and they put their kids in the Bible class. They finally sit down in the pews and they're trying to regain their strength. They're trying to regain their strength so they can be attentive in the Bible class. And then after that, they go and get their children, they get in a pew with them, and then they try to compose themselves yet again so they can then get their children to pay attention to what's going on within the sermon and also be quiet so they're not disrupting people. They're looking for a place where they can recover their strength, not to be sharply rebuked. A rebuke is defined as expressed sharp disapproval, and looking for rest, not rebuke. Now, let me be clear before we read the verse in Romans 5. There is a time and place for rebuke. The time and place for rebuke is not within the church here, not within the assembly. Here is where people are already coming to be made better. They don't need you to tell them that they're not doing right. That's why they're here, so they can help, so they can get the help they need to become better. So let's look at Romans chapter 5. At the beginning of Romans chapter 5 and verse 6. Now we know Romans chapter 5 is going to tell us in the following verses after verse 6 that God did all these things because he loved us, had compassion on us. But he did all those things because he knew that we needed a place to recover. We needed rest because he saw how weak we were. Romans chapter 5 verse 6, he says, For when we were still without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly. Why are they here? They're here because sin has made them weak and they're looking for a place to recover their strength. Lastly, why are they here? They're here for family, not fabrication. When people come here, they are looking for a family, people to bear the same name. A lot of times when we evangelize to young people, they're going to be exactly like I was. No one who never had any ties to religion, no one who is a member of the Church of Christ because they were raised in the church, they had family who was here, they are going to be first generation Christians. They are looking to bear a name that no one else in their family has ever had. And in doing so, they're taking a huge leap of faith in God as well in the church. Let's go to Luke. Luke chapter 1. In Luke chapter 1, we're going to be introduced to Gabriel. And Gabriel is going to come and talk to Mary. He's also going to come and talk to Zacharias. And he's going to let Zacharias know that you're going to have a child. And Zacharias, a little bit of disbelief, is going to then be made mute. But nonetheless, he's going to be made aware that the name that they're going to call this child is John. He's going to translate that, or he's going to communicate that to his wife, Elizabeth. And on the day of the birth of this child, she's going to say, well, we're going to call him John. And the people look at her funny, like, what kind of name is that? And they say to her in verse 61, before they go and talk to John, him saying the same thing, this. Luke chapter 1 verse 61, it says, but they said to her, there is no one among your relatives who is called by his name. So many young people who will come and sit in these pews will have parents who don't know God, will have parents who've never come into the knowledge of truth. They will have friends who don't know. They will have people in their lives that do not know the name which they are looking to bear. That's why they come to you to be family. Why are they here? They're here because they're looking for family. People who can bear the same name as them. People who are bearing the name of Christ just as they are. People who are going through the same struggles as they are. Who can have compassion on them. People who are going through the same struggles as they are and are willing to love them. People who can provide a place of rest. People who are their family. Why are they here? They're here for family, not fabrication. Final question to ask. We know why you're here. We know why they're here. But why should they stay? Why should any of us stay here? We know what can be provided. We know what God can do. So why should we stay here? Let's go to Acts chapter 16. Acts chapter 16. The reason why we should stay here, that's the older, the younger, everything in between. The reason why we should stay here is, well, for everybody. You know, we want to benefit one another within the church. We do. We want to be able to lean on each other, bear one another's burdens. We want to be able to love, show compassion. We want to be that family of God we're supposed to be. But not only should we be the family of God we're supposed to be, we should simply be the people of God, period. And in doing so, we're going to be the ones who are going to bring others to the knowledge of truth. If you haven't, you should read through Acts chapter 16. In Acts chapter 16, you're going to see Paul traveling through with a few others. And as he's traveling on his second missionary journey, he's going to want to make his way to a particular part of the world. But the Holy Spirit's going to tell him, no, don't go there. He can't go there. Then he's going to get the Macedonian call. In the vision, he's going to have someone telling him to come to Macedonia. So they make their way down to Macedonia. And the first city they get to in the region of Macedonia is Philippi. When they get to Philippi, Paul kind of breaks the custom a little bit. He doesn't go into the synagogues and preach and teach. He finds his way going down to a river where they typically meet for prayer. And there he sees a group of women and he starts to preach and teach them. And as he does, a lady who's nearby overhears by the name of Lydia. Lydia goes and hears Paul's preaching. And in hearing Paul's preaching, she's going to be converted. She's going to be converted, her and her whole household. Then he's going to come across a demon-possessed girl as they're going to pray again. And as he comes across this demon-possessed girl who's going to have masters who are making money off of her, he's going to cleanse her. And in doing so, her master's going to be mad because now they can't make any more money. So they call them out. Hey, these people are preaching about the Most High God, and they are arrested. And they are arrested. They find themselves in prison. When they find themselves in prison or jail, they continue to sing songs and hymns and spiritual songs, and they lean on each other. And as they do this, an earthquake happens. When the earthquake happens, the gates open up, and the Philippian jailer, as we call him, the Philippian jailkeeper, he wakes up, and when he wakes up, he thinks all of them are gone. And he's about to take out a sword and kill himself, and then we have our verse. Acts chapter 16, verses 28 through 30. Why should they stay there is the question. Paul has gone through all these things, and they've gone through all these things, and they're in this jail cell. The door opens wide, they're free to go. They can run out and go on and be about their day, continue to preach and teach the gospel, yet they don't do that. Why should they stay there? The reason why they stay there is to make more conversions. Philippians is going to be the evidence of this. Acts 16, 28 through 30, it says, but Paul called with a loud voice saying, do yourself no harm, for we are all here. And he called for a light, ran in, fell down, trembling before Paul and Silas, and he brought them out and said, sirs, what must I do to be saved? You know, we get to see the whole sermon lived out in this one verse here. This one section of scripture to see all that I've talked about happen. Why were they there? It's because it was good for them to be there. They were able to still go and sing and pray and talk about God, even amongst themselves, and the hearing of those who did not know about God. It was good for them to be there. Why are they there? They're there for doing good. They were put into this very place because they were preaching and teaching the gospel. Why are they there? They're there for bearing burdens. Man, it'd be a hard place to be if you were there by yourself, but they had each other to lean on. So they were bearing each other's burdens. Why were they there? They were there for compassion. They knew the sufferings of each other, and so they were able to then aid one another. They were there for love. They loved the word of God, and so they preached and they taught it openly, and they were punished for it. They were there for rest. While they were there in this jail cell, they were able to recover their strength. So whatever they were, at least they could go out and preach and teach more about Jesus Christ. They were there for family. They are the family of Jesus Christ, the family of God, and so they stuck together. They all bear the same name, but they stayed there for everybody. And them staying there, they not only converted the jailer, but his entire house. Why should we stay here within the church and within this assembly? We should stay here for God. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. 1 Corinthians chapter 7. We should stay here for the whole world because us being here is the benefit of all mankind. But also we should stay here for God. The same way that we started, the same way that we will end. We stay here because it's good for us to be here. We're here for God. The verse says, verses 22 through 24, for he who is called on the Lord while a slave is the Lord's freedman. Likewise, he who is called while free is Christ's slave. You were bought at a price. Do not become slaves of men. Brethren, let each one remain with God in that state in which he was called. Paul makes it very plain and clear here. Paul says, where else would you be? If you could be anywhere, why would you choose to be anywhere but in the hand of God? This puts me in memory of what David would go through in 1 Chronicles. In 1 Chronicles 22 and verse 13 is the verse I'll read. 1 Chronicles 21 and verse 13, David has, at the beginning of the chapter in 1 Chronicles 21, he has decided to number the people. If you read the verse, it says that Satan has risen up amongst them and convinced David to number the people. So David numbers the people, and in doing so, this is going to be wrong because he was trying to see how strong he was absent of God. It doesn't matter how many people you have, if you're on God's side, you're going to be taken care of. So David numbers the people, and in doing so, he's going to be punished. So Gad, this David's seer, comes to David and lets him know what God has said. God says you have three options. I need you to choose of one of these three. And choosing of one of these three, it will then come to pass. So the three options were 3 years of famine, 3 months of defeat by your enemies, or 3 days of the sword of the Lord, angel of the Lord, destroying all throughout the territories of Israel. Which one do you choose? And this is what David chooses, verse 21. First Chronicles chapter 21, excuse me, 1 Chronicles 21 and verse 13. It says, and David said to Gad, I am in great distress. Please let me fall into the hands of the Lord. For his mercies are very great, and do not let me fall into the hands of man. Why should you stay? Because if you're not in the hands of God, struggling with your ups and downs, allowing for him to cover you and to help you through those things, then you're going to fall into the hands of man who does not care anything about your ups and downs and what you're struggling with. I know you all can remember the time whenever either you were a youth in the Lord's church and what your youth group is like, or when you were here amongst the Lord's church and what this youth group is like. If we're wondering why that youth has changed and why it's no longer as it was, or why we don't have as many young adults as we used to have, and why we are not retaining our members like we could do throughout the entirety of the church, we can answer that and 3 questions. Why are you here? If you're not here for God, so that you can be someone who's doing good, not growing weary in it, so you can bear the burdens of others and not be a burden to others, well, that's one reason why. If you don't understand why the others are here, those who are young, those who are looking for compassion, for love, for rest, for family, well, that would be the reason why. And if you're not willing to stay here for everyone's benefit, but also for God, then that would be the 3rd reason why. Maybe you're here this morning and you'd like to change some of those things. Maybe you haven't been the most loving, maybe you haven't been the most compassionate, maybe you haven't provided a place for rescue for others. Today's a good day to change that. I see that some of our youth are missing here this morning. Some of our young adults are missing here this morning. But those who are here, encourage them. Those who are young adults and who are seeing older members who are seasoned, who've seen the ups and downs of the church and who can help you through those hard times, just like Titus was being told by Paul in Titus chapter 2, allow them to be the mother of false music to grow up as the head of Jesus Christ. But if you're here this morning and you're struggling, you have any need, whether it be to put on Christ in baptism or to repent of past sins, whatever you may be, make it known as we stand. And as we sing.
There's a louder reach to fire.